Well, a previous guest on this show, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, was actually sitting for his confirmation to head up the National Institute of Health on Wednesday. And I want to play a couple of clips from it because it was a pretty interesting hearing in front of the Senate Help Committee, Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, where if he clears the committee, and it looks like he probably will, he then goes to a full vote on the Senate floor. So let's take a look at this first clip of Dr. Bhattacharya talking about how he will regulate research in the future.
NIH-supported science should be replicable, reproducible, and generalizable. Unfortunately, much modern biomedical science fails this basic test. The NIH itself, just last year, faced a research integrity scandal involving research on Alzheimer's disease that throws into question hundreds of research papers. If the data generated by scientists is not reliable, the products of such science cannot help anyone. It is no stretch to think that the slow progress on Alzheimer's disease is linked to this problem. The NIH can and must solve the crisis of scientific data reliability. Under my leadership, if confirmed, it will do so.
All right, now let's take a look at his exchange with one prominent Democrat on the committee when he was pushed on vaccines.
In terms of a few other things, are there any vaccines out there that you are concerned about in terms of safety?
Senator, I was concerned about the COVID vaccines for young men with causing myocarditis in 2021.
I want to highlight the takeaway of another former guest on this show, Dr. Vinay Prasad, who actually posted on X as the hearing was ongoing. The Jay Bhattacharya hearing basically shows that in the COVID-19 debates, Jay has won. Pretty much all of his policy positions are now accepted by both political parties. And you may remember Dr. Bhattacharya from those early days of COVID. And to some of you, I think rightfully, this man is a hero. He stood up against the medical establishment, against Dr. Anthony Fauci, against Dr. Francis Collins, when there was immense political pressure for him to just go along with the flow and not say anything at all. He's an absolutely fascinating person. He was very brave during that time, and he was questioning the official narrative when it was incredibly difficult to do so. So he was a co-author of the landmark Great Barrington Declaration. His nomination, even to head up NIH, was a huge deal in and of itself. The fact that Donald Trump took someone who was embattled and brave and ultimately vindicated despite the attacks from everyone, not just in substance was that important, but it felt like symbolically just an incredible victory for people who were skeptical of the official COVID narrative on both the left and the right, by the way. So it'll be interesting to see how, when he's in charge of NIH, as he seems likely to be in charge of NIH, he sort of works alongside Robert F. Kennedy Jr., somebody who doesn't come from the political right at all either. Dr. Bhattacharya is not before COVID, was not in political circles seen as a massively political person. He's a Stanford epidemiologist who actually, by his own telling, once really admired Anthony Fauci. That's one of the things he talked about here on Undercurrents several months ago before he was nominated to head NIH. You should go watch that episode because it's a fascinating story that Bhattacharya tells. But remember, he was referred to by Dr. Francis Collins as a, quote, fringe epidemiologist, a fringe epidemiologist. And here he is, as Vinay Prasad posted on X, basically having won the battle. You know, it's so interesting to see someone like Bhattacharya coming in and talking about cuts that sound very DOGE, if you'll excuse the phrase, because this is someone who can put a good face on DOGE, right? You can talk about other issues where you have highly partisan, Elon Musk himself, sort of a highly partisan, sort of eccentric face of DOGE. But here's an area where Bhattacharya just sort of has a never-ending buffet of examples of waste and maybe even examples of fraud that will be at his fingertips. He has an example of a totally broken system in front of him. And basically, it's getting very difficult for Democrats to truly push back. They don't want to kind of embrace Fauciism at this point. It would be so dangerous for them to embrace Fauciism. So Bhattacharya has this rare moment, this very charged, rare moment in front of him where the public doesn't trust these institutions. And he's coming from a responsible and vindicated and expert level position. And, one thing that you can say about Elon Musk himself is he actually really doesn't come from an expert position on, for example, USAID. He's clearly been immersing himself and learning a lot about the issue, immersing himself in and learning a lot about the issue in recent weeks. But he is very much an eccentric. He's very much somebody who has his, by his own admission, he's going to make mistakes because he's shooting from the hip. And he says some of the things I post on X will be wrong. Some of the things I post will be right. Bhattacharya is a very reasonable, responsible person who comes from an expert level position on these issues. And so you can see for the Trump administration just what a fantastic pick Bhattacharya is here. I am not an expert in this space whatsoever. I have followed Bhattacharya very closely, obviously, since the Great Barrington Declaration and since the early days of COVID when he was staking out a very brave position. I didn't know what to think at the time, but he proved himself and to have been the responsible actor there. So it's easy, I think, for people like us people like me, I should say, who aren't experts in this space. Most people aren't experts in this space, to put their faith in Bhattacharya over Fauciism, which Dr. Anthony Fauci was somebody who was revered by people like Bhattacharya, was trusted by people like Bhattacharya, and then ultimately really lost favor because he proved himself to be untrustworthy. So it's easy to sort of say, well, I'm going to trust this guy, and I'm not going to make any claims that Bhattacharya is going to, ride in on a white horse and wave a magic wand and fix everything. I don't think he would say that he would. My point here just is really that it's in substance and in style. Bhattacharya is a great face for the broader DOGE project, the broader Trump project, at a moment when there are some really reasonable criticisms of what's happened in other places of the government. This is sort of the best face of what DOGE could be. And we will see how it plays out. We will be covering it here, but this was a very interesting hearing. This is one of those hearings that went pretty well for the Trump crew, as would be sort of expected. This was just a good pick. I was going to say a common sense pick, but I don't think it was. I mean, this is something that really flips prior Republican approaches on its head. You used to see Republicans not wanting to pluck controversial figures and sort of turn the narrative around. There was a fear of what could happen. Oh my goodness, this man who dared to question Anthony Fauci and the media. Bhattacharya has been a huge critic, although a reasonable critic of the media. We don't want to antagonize people, Republicans used to say. And now these antagonisms actually, I think Republicans understand, work in their favor because the public wants to see people picking fights with the media and the expert class because the public doesn't trust them anymore. And people are just sort of grasping, foiling for something to trust in the sea of, lies and spin and genuine mis and disinformation. So thanks for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube, wherever you download your podcast. You can head over to the undercurrents.tv community, sign up there. It's $1 for your first month. You get a weekly email, paywalled episodes every week, and an email address to communicate with us. We will see you back here with more Undercurrents soon.